Alright, here's our video on specialized high school test questions, part 1. We're only doing the math problem. So if you're taking the specialized, and we'll go over this in class, but there's 150 questions. You have to do 150 minutes. You have 150 minutes to take the test. That's 2.5 hours, and there's 50 math questions. The good news is maybe it's not good news, but it's multiple choice. So that, for a lot of students, that's better than just doing computation. So you have 50 math questions. We're only doing the math, and we'll do some problems. The problems you'll see are on the video are a little harder than the ones you'll see in a booklet, just a little harder. So let's look at one. We'll do a few problems in each video. So here we have a order of operation problem. You should remember GEMDIS, and GEMDIS is just PEMDAS, but the proper name is GEMDIS. You'll see GEMDIS more often. GEMDIS just means grouping symbols, and you know the grouping symbols are the parentheses and the brackets, and of course we have the braces, and the braces are the highest, so it goes braces, brackets, and parentheses. So in this case we only have parentheses, so if you don't remember GEMDIS, just think of PEMDAS. So what do you think you should do first? Okay, so the first thing we should do is inside the parentheses. Remember, grouping symbols first. So do inside the parentheses, which is the grouping symbol, and what would you get? So 4 minus 6.5, right? Just remember GEMDIS or PEMDAS gives us negative 2.5. So now we're doing negative 2.5 cubed. Remember, we're doing exponents next. We're doing the exponent part. So what's the next step? Okay, when you have negative 2.5 cubed, okay, you'll get negative 15.625. Now remember, there's no calculators during the test, so you'll have problems that are not extremely difficult to do on paper. Okay, so you have negative 15.625, and just remember something. Let's go back for a minute. Just remember something. When you have a negative, it should be in parentheses. Anytime you have an odd integer, odd exponent, that is. If you have an odd exponent, you know the answer is going to be negative. So again, let me show you. Let's say we had a negative 3.6 to the 5th power. You know the answer will be negative because you have an odd exponent. And if the exponent is even, you know it's going to be positive. And this is only when you have negatives. Okay? So we said, well, we did the exponents and we got this. So what is the next step? Okay, so remember GEMDIS or PEMDAS. We're doing multiplication. Remember, when you see parentheses, we're distributing the 30 into here. That's multiplication. When you don't see a symbol, it's multiplication. So what would the next step be? So again, you should pause the tape and try to do this. So here we go, negative 468.75 minus 30. And now remember to keep change when you see subtraction. Only with subtraction, you know that. So this will be negative 468.75 plus a negative 30. Keep change, right? And your final answer. There it is. So you should review that again. I'll have problems for you. There's a Word file that is attached to this video that you can do more problems on that. So let's do the next problem. These problems are similar to the ones you would see in the handbook. So if P over Q equals 5, so we have a fraction here. We don't know what the numbers are. We have these variables. If P over Q equals 5 and P equals 15, what is the value of 4 times Q? Remember, anytime you have a coefficient, which is the number, next to the variable, it's multiplication, minus P squared. So we already know that P is 15, right? So we can say 4Q minus 15 squared. So always put in what you have. Now we're missing what Q is, right? And remember order of operations. You can do 15 squared here, and then you can do algebra. Right? So what do you think the next step is? Now, if you got confused on this, let's take it one at a time first. So here we're saying P is 15. So let's go back. If P is 15, remember we started with P over Q equals 5. So if P is 15, well, now we have 15 over Q equals 5. And if you remember, one of the shortcuts, multiply up or divide down. You can do either one. Now, if you multiply up, you're going to get Q times 5, which is 5Q. Remember, Q times 5 is 5Q, or Q5. But this is the normal way of doing it, 5Q. Remember the commutative property. So we have 5Q equals 15. Or you could divide down. 15 divided by 5 gives us 3. We already know what Q is. So either way, whatever you are comfortable with. So now that I know that Q is 3, because 15 divided by 5 is 3, well, we can plug it in. We have 15 over 3 equals 5, and that does make sense. Let's move on. The question was this now. This was the main question. So we know what P is, and we know what Q is. Now be careful when you're doing this on the test. Make sure you put in the proper numbers. You might have the numbers, but then you might, by accident, and this has happened with, you just switch it around by accident. Instead of P being 15, you made it 3 by accident. So we know Q is 3, and P is 15. So just plug it in. And what do you think the answer is here? Just do the order of operations. Okay, well, we have 4 times 3, which is 12, minus 15 squared, and we get this, and that's our answer. So rewind the tape if you didn't understand that. Now the next one is a little bit of logic mixed in, using these weird names. One sinned, and this is a question that has appeared last year. So this says 1 sinned equals 5.6 ricks. And they're also saying 1 sinned equals 12.88 dalts. And the question is, how many dalts equal 1 rick? So it seems like a nonsensical question. So let's look at this now. If 1 sinned equals 5.6 ricks, and 1 sinned also equals 12.88 dalts, there's something you should look at logically. That means that 5.6 ricks has to equal 12.88 dalts. Now, I'm not saying 5.6 times R. I'm just saying that using that for ricks, just shortening it. They have to equal each other. Let's look at it again. If this equals that, and this equals that, then this must equal that. It's like saying this. Let's erase that. It's like if I said A equals B, and A equals C. Well, doesn't it make sense that B equals C also? Sometimes you have to think of common sense here. So we know that 5.6 R ricks must equal 12.88 dalts just because of what we see here. This equals that, thus this must equal that. So, remember what I've been telling you in 7th grade, proportions can solve a lot of problems. So if we know this equals this, we can make a proportion. We're trying to find this now. 5.6 ricks. So we can say the ricks up here are in adults. 5.6 ricks equals 12.8 dalts. So 1 rick must equal how many dalts? Cross multiply. So try that. Cross multiply. What do you get? Okay, now it's just doing the algebra. If you remember, you want to isolate the x. Of course, you could have made this a d, whatever, it doesn't matter. Some people put d for dalts. So again, to isolate the x here, we want to divide the 5.6 on that one side. Whatever you do to one side, do to the other. So you're dividing. And what do you get? 2.3. Okay, so that's part 1. Those are the 3 questions. Do the word document that comes with this video, and we'll do more questions in part 2. Great job.